Hey grade 6, new topic for us today. It is multiplying decimals by whole numbers. It's a carry-on of the other day's video. And so our learning target is that you're going to be able to multiply decimals up to the 100th place by a whole number. So I'm going to show you some strategies that you can use to do that. A couple of skills you need to be able to do this. You need to be able to do multi-digit by single-digit multiplication in what's called the standard algorithm. So just like, let's say, a 2 or 3 digit number times and then a smaller number on the bottom that you've sort of been shown in the past. You need to be able to use base 10 for decimal operations, so recognizing when you see those things. And then you need to be able to multiply multi-digit decimal numbers by multiples of 10, so things like 10, 100, 1,000, 0.1, 0.01, etc. So on we go. So here's our first one. It's the first one that we're going to be looking at is multiplying decimals by whole numbers using place values. And so what we're going to do is look at this number 2.13, and we're going to start figuring out, well, there are two ones. I'm just going to move it up a little bit. There we go. There is 1/10. And there is 3 hundredths, and that's how we would split that number up. Now what they're asking us to do is to multiply that number by 3. And so we can go this way and say, well, 3 hundredths times 3 is going to give us 9, and 1/10 times 3 is going to give us 3/10, and 2 ones times 3 is going to give us 6 ones. Let's put that back into place a little bit better. And so that's what that's going to equal. It would be 6.39. So we can also multiply a decimal by a whole number using place values. So what we're going to do is multiply using place values. And so we'll just go from right to left. We'll go from left to right because there's not going to be any regrouping here. So we can do 3.12 times 3. So we have 3 times 3 is 9. Then 1 times 3 is 3. And then 2 times 3 is 6. So we have 9 ones, 3/10, and 6 hundredths. Over here, 4.12 times 2. 4 times 2 would give us 8 ones. 1 times 2 would give us 2/10. And 2 times 2 would give us 4 hundredths. So we'd end up with 8.24. And lastly, 1 times 3 gives us 3 ones. And then 3/10 times 3 gives us 9/10. And 3 hundredths times 3 gives us 9 hundredths. So this little note down here, so far none of our questions have involved regrouping. That will change. Now what this is going to ask you to do is to use your, actually before we do that, sorry, if you want to pause the video, you can work on the first 4 questions in your workbook, and so that is found on page 34 and 30, nope, just 34, and then once you're done you can follow along with this again. Now the second thing here says at your desk use base 10 materials and addition to calculate 2.16 times 3. So this is 2.16. We have 2 ones. Then we have the 1/10 and then the 6 hundredths for that. And when we do that modeling, right, this is the model. And so what we get here is we have 6 ones. We have 3/10. And then we have actually 18 hundredths, but we'd have to regroup that. So we regroup here, okay, and so we would get 6.48 because we've had to use some regrouping. Is there any more? Yeah, you have to regroup the 10 hundredths for 1/10. Okay, if you don't want to draw out all of the base 10 stuff, I don't blame you. It can get a little bit tedious sometimes. Another strategy that you might want to consider is using money. We've looked at some stuff where we've multiplied money because it's decimal multiplication, and we're kind of familiar with money because we use it on a regular basis. So this would be how to write that out. So we'd have 2 loonies, a dime, and then 6 pennies in terms of $2.16. If you do 3 groups, then you would get that. Now again, you're going to end up with 18 pennies, and so you're going to need to mark off. I'll just draw a little, let's see, I'll draw a little circle. We can group 10 of those pennies together because 10 pennies represents a dime. And so that's actually going to be, we have the $6, then the 3 dimes, and then this regrouped one. So that's 4 dimes. And then these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 leftover pennies. It still is going to equal $6.48. Making sure you use a dollar sign. So that's just a different strategy. The answer is going to end up being the same, the $6.48. So you can use addition or and base 10 materials or money to find 1.63 times 2. So if we're going to assume for a second that maybe it's $1.63, that's going to be a loonie. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dimes, and then 3 pennies. And I'll just put some spaces here. And so that could be how we, model out $1.63. So a loonie, 6 dimes, and 3 pennies. If we're multiplying it by 2, then we would have 2 groups. So we end up with 2 loonies, 12 dimes, and 6 pennies. Now, that means we have to do some regrouping. Because every 10, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then every 10, I'll try to make this neat. Every 10 dimes gets regrouped as a loonie. And so now we have the 2 loonies plus the other dollar, the other loonie, or regrouped dimes. So we would end up with, actually, and it's dollar. We're assuming it's dollars. $3, and then 26 cents. So 1.63 times 2 would give us $3.26, and then we do some regrouping. Now, if you want, you can pause it here and work on number 5 in the workbook, which is found on page 35, I believe, and we're going to move on to the next slide. So the next thing says here that we're going to use place values to find 2.63 times 2, and so again, there are 2 ones, there are 6 tenths, and there are 3 hundredths. And now we're going to be asked to multiply that by 2. And so we can just start following along here. That's going to be 4 ones after do the multiplication. 6 times 2 is going to give us 12 tenths, and then the 3 times 2 is going to give us the 6 hundredths. Now, you may notice that we have to do some regrouping again. And so every 10 tenths can get regrouped. And so our actual answer, once we've done the regrouping, is going to give us 5.26. And so we can say then that 2.63 times 2 is going to be 5.26 after we have done this regrouping and basically taken this one and moved it over here. So that's going to give us the 5.26. All right. So another bit of practice here. And again, you can pause it if you want and try them on your own. Just go through it. So we have our 2 ones, our 4 tenths, and our 8 hundredths. And again, once we have done that multiplication, we're going to have 4 ones here. We'll have 8 tenths, and then we'll have 16 hundredths. And because we can't have more than 9 in any of these values, we're going to have to regroup and move over here. So we'll move that 1, and then that's going to end up giving us 4.96. And so we can say then that 2.48 times 2 would give us 4.96. Yeah. Again, some more practice. You can multiply using place values. and you can pause it if you would like. There's some bonus questions there. I'll just give you the answer real quick because I want to move on. And so we have 2.61 times 3 is going to give us 7.83. 1.52 times 3 is going to give us 4.56. 1.28 times 3 is going to give us 3.84. And then 5.29 times 2 is going to give us 10.48. So again, some regrouping. There's some bonus questions down there, which I will show, and you can pause it and do those on your own if you'd like, but I'm going to just move on to the next topic. All right, so now this is what's called the standard algorithm for multiplication. In the workbook, it often gets shown in terms of the grid. And so what we're going to do is, actually I'm going to use this tool. So we have 7 times 2 is going to be 14. And then 3 times 2 is 6 plus the 1 is 7. And then 2 times 2 is 4. Now what they're showing us here is with a decimal, instead of it being 237 times 2, it's 2.37 times 2. The numbers stay the same, but because there's 2 decimal places in the question up here, there's got to be 2 decimal places down here because those numbers have to coincide with how. So it's 4.74. The only difference here is the decimal place. Now the question here is, what's the fastest way to multiply a number by 10? We usually think of it in terms of adding a 0 after the number, so it becomes 230. What we're actually doing is we're moving the decimal place from 23 over 1 spot, so it gives us 230. Because what's here is the same rule applies to multiplying a decimal by 10. You move the decimal place over 1 spot, and so 2.3 times 10 is going to give us 23. And so if you wanted to pause for a second, do 8 and 9 in the workbook, that would be the spot to do it. The last thing that I'm going to show you is how to use something called the associative property. The associative property, it works with addition and multiplication. And so I'll just put a question down here for a second. If I have something like 12 plus 3 plus 10, but let's say that I put brackets here, then the brackets tell me I have to do that stuff first. And so 12 plus 3 is it's 15, and then I'm still adding the 10, which is going to equal 25. Now what the associative property tells me is that I can take this question, and I could say 12 plus 3 plus 10, and if I put the brackets here, then I still have to do what's in the brackets first. So that becomes 12 plus 13, because I know that I have to do this part first. And so I get 12 plus 13, and that still is going to be 25. And that's going to work at any point. It also works for multiplication. So if this was like 12 times 3 times 10, it's going to equal 360. If I did 12 times 3 times 10 with the brackets here, it's still going to equal 360. Now, what I'm going to do with that knowledge, and if you want more explanation on that, you can watch a video on it yourself. But what we can do here is we can use that idea and break 20 into 2 times 10 times 2.3, and then we can say, well, let's do that one first, because I know what the answer to that's going to be. So then I would say that's 2 times 23, because we just moved the decimal over 1, and then 2 times 23 is 46. And so I'm going to run out of time, but I'll just try to type these out quickly. So this could become 3 times 10 times 1.2. This one could become 4 times 10 times 2.1. So it's just a quicker way to sort of figure this stuff out. This could become 6 times 10 times 1.1. And then that's a quicker way to use the associative property, and then this is the practice in the workbook. Sorry that I ran out of time, guys.